The fire alarm went off at 6:47 a.m. in Building C, but not because of an actual fire. The Apex system had just short-circuited trying to process two identical purchase orders from departments that shouldn't even exist anymore. Double billing, double shipping, double headache. Nobody noticed until pallets started showing up with the same SKU codes stamped twice, one marked Urgent Executive, the other Priority Ops Team. That's when I knew Apex was choking. Not crashing, just clearing its throat in that quiet, ugly way systems do right before everything goes to hell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Name's Jason Wright, 49 years old, and I've been babysitting computer systems longer than most of these kids have been alive. 2 weeks earlier, I was sitting in my cubicle at 11 p.m., Mountain Dew in one hand and a network diagnostic tool in the other, trying to figure out why Apex had randomly decided that everyone with a birthday in March deserved double overtime pay. That wasn't a glitch. That was Kevin in payroll trying to rig the system again so he could afford his kid's spring break trip. I fixed it quietly, logged it, moved on. That was the deal. I kept Apex breathing, and in return, Titanium Industries let me do my job without the corporate circus. See, I learned something in the Navy that most civilians never figure out. The best work happens when nobody's watching. No team-building retreats where they make you fall backwards into someone's arms. No forced birthday celebrations where you pretend to care about Karen from marketing turning 32. No meetings that could have been handled with a 5-minute phone call. Just me, my systems, and about 15 years of code that looked like it was written by a caffeinated octopus having a breakdown. Apex wasn't pretty, but it worked because I made it work. Every night after the day shift went home, I'd be there with my diagnostics and my coffee that could strip paint, making sure everything ran smooth for the morning crew. I'd patch the little problems before they became big problems, update the security protocols, run the maintenance cycles that kept everything humming. I wasn't flashy, didn't wear expensive suits or drop buzzwords in presentations, never volunteered to give talks at the quarterly all-hands meetings, but I was necessary, whether the suits knew it or not. I was the guy who patched the procurement loop after their digital transformation failed spectacularly. I was the one who built the back end that made HR think they actually understood metrics. I designed the automated routing that fixed shipping delays before customers even noticed. But since I didn't speak at company meetings or wear a tie to Casual Friday, the executives forgot I existed. Which was fine by me. I'd learned in the service that the guys who talk the most usually know the least. Better to be the guy they call when everything's broken than the guy who breaks everything by trying to look important. Only the folks on the operations floor knew what I looked like. Sean from logistics called me the ghost in the server room. Rachel from accounting once left me a post-it note that said, "Thanks for fixing the printer again. You're the only reason I haven't thrown this thing out the window. I kept that one on my monitor for 3 years." So yeah, maybe my corporate card had a few charges labeled cybersecurity certification and penetration testing workshop. And maybe I submitted them every quarter like clockwork. But nobody questioned it. Not finance, not HR, not even the VP of operations. Why? Because when Apex hiccuped, people missed bonuses. When Apex failed, people lost jobs. When Apex died, well, we'll get to that. I kept my world simple. Quiet updates after hours, system reports routed through my console, admin credentials rotated weekly like we did on the ship, and yes, I backed everything up off-site, triple encrypted, biometric locked. You think I trust Lucas from Junior IT with access to anything more complex than his email password? The kid once clicked on a "You've won a free iPhone" pop-up and bricked his laptop 3 times in 1 week. They called the system Apex because it held everything together. Logistics, payroll, vendor timelines, internal workflows, budget tracking, shift scheduling, compliance monitoring, even the snack machine restocking orders. If you unplugged me, the lights would stay on, but nothing would move. You'd have a Ferrari with no keys, no gas, and the engine locked behind about 6 firewalls and a digital sticky note that said, "Nice try, buddy." But nobody asked how Apex worked. They just assumed it was magic, like the coffee maker or the air conditioning. Push a button, stuff happens. And I kept it that way because that's what worked. Until she showed up. Ashley Morgan. If arrogance were a cologne, she'd bathe in it. Fresh MBA from some private school where they teach you buzzwords instead of how things actually work. perfectly manicured nails that had never touched a keyboard for more than typing emails, and hired straight into HR because her daddy, Richard Morgan, happened to chair the board of directors. Word around the office was she'd gotten bounced from her last job for trying to restructure the diversity budget into a wine-tasting fund. But here she was, strutting around in heels that cost more than my monthly car payment, asking questions nobody had bothered to ask in 15 years. On her third day, she cornered my supervisor near the coffee machine and asked, "Why is this Jason person expensing $3,200 on penetration testing frameworks?" My supervisor, bless him, replied, "Because if he stops, our company gets penetrated, and not in a good way." Ashley didn't laugh, didn't even crack a smile. She just wrote something down in her little leather notebook and walked away. I should have known right then that the countdown had started. She went straight to finance, straight to compliance, straight to Daddy's office on the executive floor. I knew because Sean from logistics saw her marching around with my expense reports printed on bright pink paper, like she was carrying evidence of a crime. The way she slammed those papers on conference tables, you'd think she'd discovered I was embezzling funds to buy a yacht. The thing is, those courses weren't some luxury spa weekend. They were enterprise-grade cybersecurity certifications. The kind of training that keeps companies from getting their data stolen by some 14-year-old in Romania with too much time and a grudge. But Ashley saw dollar signs and assumed fraud because that's what business school teaches you. Everybody's trying to scam you. The meeting was supposed to be about Q4 budget planning, 2 hours of PowerPoint slides explaining why a pizza party should make up for the bonuses they canceled last quarter. Standard corporate theater. I showed up because the invite said mandatory, and I'd learned in the Navy that you show up when ordered, even if it's stupid. I sat in the back like always, nursing coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through old gym socks. The usual suspects were there. Department heads checking their phones, middle managers pretending to take notes, executives looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Nobody noticed me. Nobody ever did. Until Ashley clicked to slide 7 and made my name the headline. "Let's talk about accountability," she said, and the room temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. My name sat there in bold Arial font like a wanted poster. Jason Wright. Ongoing non-compliance with expense policy. She was enjoying this. You could tell by the way she paused, letting the silence build like she was conducting an orchestra of corporate drama. This was her moment to prove she belonged in Daddy's company, that she could spot problems the old guard had missed. "I conducted a thorough review of recent expenses," Ashley continued, voice carrying that practiced authority they teach in MBA programs. "And I found multiple charges from this employee who operates completely unsupervised. Courses, licenses, training programs, whatever he wants to call them." The room was dead quiet now. Half the people there didn't even know my name 5 minutes ago. But suddenly, I was the most interesting person in the building. Ashley was feeding off the attention like a plant in sunlight. She finally turned to look at me. The whole room followed like dominoes falling in slow motion. "Jason," she said, and my name sounded different coming from her mouth. Smaller somehow. "Would you like to explain why you've been using company funds for personal development without proper authorization?" I didn't answer immediately. In the Navy, we learned that silence can be a weapon if you know how to use it. Let the other person fill the empty space with their own assumptions. She didn't wait long. "I've already cleared this with the board," Ashley announced, raising her voice like she was addressing a courtroom. "Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated for violation of expense policies and failure to follow proper approval procedures. Please surrender your badge and log out of all systems. Security will provide escort if necessary." The silence that followed was the kind you feel in your chest. 23 people holding their breath, waiting to see if I'd explode, beg, throw something. The executives looked uncomfortable. They knew enough to understand that firing the IT guy might not be smart, but they also knew better than to question Richard Morgan's daughter in public. I stood up slowly. No drama, no outburst. Just a calm rise from my chair, like I was getting up to refill my coffee. Reached into my pocket and pulled out my ID badge, the little plastic rectangle that had gotten me through the front door every morning for 15 years. I walked to the center of the room, past the conference table with its polished surface reflecting the overhead lights, past the projector still displaying my name like an indictment, set my badge down gently next to the coffee carafe and the stack of pastries nobody was eating. Then I looked at Ashley, just once, direct eye contact, the way you do when you want someone to remember exactly what you said. "You have 5 hours," I told her. She blinked. "Excuse me? 5 hours before your main system's locked down." And then I walked out. No microphone to drop, no grand speech about loyalty or justice. Just those 8 words hanging in the air like smoke from a gun. Nobody heard fire. Behind me, Ashley let out that forced little laugh people do when they're not sure if they've been insulted. "Was that a threat?" she called out, but I was already at the door, already gone. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. 15 floors of polished chrome reflecting my face back at me, showing a guy who looked calmer than he had any right to be. Because here's what nobody in that room understood, what Ashley never bothered to learn in all her research. Apex didn't just run logistics. It was logistics. Every invoice, every shipment, every payroll distribution, every compliance report, it all flowed through systems I'd built from scratch. And those expensive courses she'd flagged? They weren't luxuries. They were the keys to the kingdom, enterprise-grade certifications that tied directly to my personal credentials. No shared logins, no backup administrators, no emergency overrides. One name, one fingerprint, one person who knew where all the digital bodies were buried. Me. 5 hours. That's how long the automated security protocols would take to complete their final cycle before permanent lockdown. It wasn't sabotage, it was built-in protection. When the primary administrator leaves without proper handoff, the system protects itself the only way it knows how. The elevator opened on the 3rd floor, and I walked toward my desk past coworkers who looked like they'd seen a ghost. News travels fast in office buildings. Lucas from Junior IT was standing by the printer, mouth open like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out what. My cubicle was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Half-dead cactus on the windowsill that Rachel had given me 3 Christmases ago. Bobblehead of a Navy mascot that I'd superglued back together after the holiday party incident. 2 coffee mugs with stains that could probably be carbon dated. I pulled out my backpack and started packing. No tears, no angry drawer slams, just the quiet shuffle of cables and backup drives finding their way into zippered compartments. 15 years of accumulated desk junk, and most of it wasn't worth keeping. The whispers started about 5 minutes later. Did he really get fired? What's going to happen to the systems? I thought he was the computer guy. Nobody came over to ask directly. That's office culture for you. Everybody's curious, nobody wants to get involved. Ashley strutted back onto the floor about 10 minutes later, walking like she'd just solved world hunger. Her heels clicked against the tile with the rhythm of someone checking items off a to-do list. She did a little victory lap past the engineering section, made sure everyone could see her confident smile. She had no idea what she'd just done. I reached into my bottom drawer and pulled out a USB drive. Black, unmarked except for a piece of masking tape across the top with good luck written in Sharpie. Set it right in the center of my chair cushion where someone would definitely find it. No fireworks, no dramatic gesture, just a little digital breadcrumb for whoever inherited this mess. Zipped up my backpack, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the elevator. Didn't look back, didn't slam anything, just walked out like it was any other day. The elevator hummed quietly as it descended, and I could hear Apex humming in the walls around me. All those servers and switches I'd maintained for 15 years, still running on autopilot. For now. By the time I hit the parking lot, my access badge had already deactivated. I walked past security, past the lobby with Richard Morgan's photo next to the mayor, past that motivational poster that said excellence is a journey hanging next to the fire extinguisher I'd used to stop a server meltdown last summer. Outside, the air was crisp. October in Portland, that clean smell you get when the rain's coming but hasn't started yet. I didn't punch the sky or kick anything, just sat in my truck, pulled out my backup phone, and sent one text message to an old Navy buddy who worked at North Star Defense Solutions. Available immediately. Call when you get this. Then I drove home. No plan to come back, no exit interview, no forwarding address for my final paycheck. But that USB drive sitting on my chair, that was either going to be very helpful or very entertaining, depending on who found it first. Hour 1, it started small. A missed shipment here, a glitched report there. The kind of thing that happens every day in any big company, so nobody panicked. Yet. The first real problem was a truck loaded with priority samples for the Chicago trade show. It should have left the dock at 8 a.m., but the shipping label printed blank. When the warehouse guys tried to reprint it, Apex spat out a page full of question marks and a single crying emoji, something I'd programmed as an Easter egg years ago when I was bored during a night shift. "Printer error," said the warehouse manager, and tried to route it through the backup system. That's when Apex informed him that the backup queue had been temporarily relocated to a parallel universe, another one of my jokes that nobody had ever seen before. Up in accounting, Rachel noticed that half the morning's invoices were stuck in draft status. She tried refreshing her screen, then rebooting her computer, then calling AT. Lucas answered on the fourth ring and said he'd look into it, which in junior IT speak means I have no idea what you're talking about. Ashley was in her office, probably updating her LinkedIn with successfully streamlined departmental efficiency or whatever these people write when they fire someone. She had no clue that the first cracks were already showing. Hour 2. Kevin in payroll called down to IT, not panicked yet, but definitely annoyed. Half their disbursements were stuck, the other half had vanished completely. Lucas tried running a diagnostic, got a timeout message, attempted to access the main console, got locked out entirely. When Lucas tried to escalate the issue, Apex bounced back a cheerful red banner, "Access denied. You are not the chosen one." I'd written that during a Lord of the Rings marathon about 6 years ago. Nobody had questioned it because nobody had ever seen it. Nicole from Sales Ops, sharp as a tack and always 2 seconds from quitting anyway, started putting pieces together. She walked over to Lucas's desk and asked, "Didn't Jason handle all the Apex stuff?" Lucas nodded, sweating a little. "Yeah, but I mean, it's just software, right? Can't be that complicated." Nicole stared at him. "When's the last time you successfully logged into the main system?" "Well, I usually Jason always..." Lucas trailed off as he realized he'd never actually had admin access to anything important. Somewhere in the building, Sean from logistics was discovering that his entire morning schedule had been replaced with a gif of a raccoon setting a dumpster on fire. Definitely one of mine. Hour 3. Ashley was holding her weekly change acceleration meeting, still pretending everything was normal. Just some minor hiccups, she told her team, flipping through her notes like she had everything under control. Growing pains from legacy systems. Let's not catastrophize minor glitches. Those exact words would later be printed on coffee mugs by several bitter employees. Meanwhile, the first customer complaint came in. A major distributor in Seattle hadn't received their automated restock notification, and their warehouse was sitting empty. When customer service tried to check the order status, Apex showed them a spinning wheel that said, "Searching for meaning in a meaningless void." I'd been having a philosophical period when I wrote that one. Nicole had given up trying to work through the system crashes and walked straight to facilities. "I need a key to Jason's old office," she said. "Why?" asked the facilities manager. "Because our entire operation is falling apart, and he's the only one who knew how to fix it." She found my office locked down tight, not just locked, sealed. The electronic lock was flashing red, and the keycard reader was displaying "Nope" in cheerful green letters. That's when she called my cell phone. Got my voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Jason Wright. I'm currently unavailable. If this is regarding Apex, please refer to the documentation I submitted 6 months ago. If you can't find it, check with HR. They're very thorough about reading important emails." Hour 4. Legal tried to access compliance reports for a vendor audit due the next morning. Apex responded with a spinning wheel, then displayed that raccoon and dumpster fire gif again. I really was fond of that one. The CEO, who'd been blissfully unaware of the growing digital hurricane, finally got dragged into the mess when his calendar app failed to remind him about an earnings call. He walked into an empty conference room. No prep notes, no CFO, no agenda. Just 5 spinning chairs and the growing realization that something was very wrong. He stormed down to what had become the Apex Crisis Management Center, formerly the break room, now filled with laptops and increasingly desperate IT contractors. "Where's the backup?" he demanded. "There are snapshots," Lucas stammered, "but they're partial. The main system access was tied to Jason's credentials. So call him." We tried. He's not answering. Ashley, who'd been hiding in her office for the past hour, finally made an appearance. "It's not permanent," she said, voice higher than usual. "We can rebuild it, patch it. It's just software." The CTO, who hadn't spoken up all year, actually laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "You can't patch this," he said. "Jason didn't build a program. He grew a digital nervous system. And you just severed the spinal cord." Hour 5. By 2 p.m., 3 different consulting firms had been called in. One sent a guy named Chris, who kept calling the servers bro and left after 20 minutes. Another tried to brute force their way through an old maintenance port. Apex responded by shutting down all non-essential operations and sending a company-wide Slack message, "Unauthorized access detected, implementing enhanced security protocols. Have a great day." The third firm took one look at my system architecture and quoted $500 an hour with no guarantee of success. That's when someone found the USB drive I'd left on my chair. Lucas plugged it into his laptop and it immediately played a 10-second video of me waving goodbye. Then it wiped itself clean and displayed a single message. "You had 15 years to ask how it worked. Now you have 5 hours to figure out how to live without it." The room went completely silent. Ashley's father, Richard Morgan, finally made his appearance in the crisis room, took one look at the chaos, one look at his daughter's panicked face, and asked the question everyone had been avoiding. "Can we get Jason back?" Nobody answered, because by then it was too late. Apex had gone into full lockdown mode, and the only person with the keys to restart it was driving home in his pickup truck, probably listening to classic rock and wondering what his new job at North Star Defense would be like. That night, while Titanium Industries was hemorrhaging money and dignity in equal measure, I was sitting in my kitchen reading job offers. Turns out word travels fast in the defense contractor world, especially when you're a former Navy IT guy with security clearance and a reputation for keeping critical systems running. My phone had been buzzing since about 3 p.m. Old shipmates who'd heard through the grapevine that Jason Wright was suddenly available. Recruiters who'd been trying to poach me for years but never had a chance because I was loyal to Titanium. Company executives who understood the difference between expense reports and investment in infrastructure. The best call came from Captain Rodriguez at North Star Defense Solutions. We'd served together on the USS Portland back in '98, back when computer networks were held together with prayer and Ethernet cable. "Right," he said without preamble. "Heard you just became available. We've got a position heading up cybersecurity for the Pacific Northwest contracts. Salary's about 40% more than whatever Titanium was paying you, plus security clearance bonus, plus stock options. You interested?" "When do I start?" I asked. "Yesterday would be good. Tomorrow works too." While I was having career opportunities dropped in my lap, Titanium Industries was discovering what life looked like without a central nervous system. Richard Morgan had called an emergency board meeting for 8 p.m., and by all accounts it was not going well. The CFO had printed out a color-coded breakdown of the day's losses: $127,000 in missed shipments, $89,000 in delayed invoicing, $45,000 in overtime for people manually trying to do what Apex used to handle automatically. And that was just day one. "How long to rebuild the system?" Richard asked the room. The CTO, who'd been brought out of semi-retirement for this crisis, didn't sugarcoat it. 18 months minimum, $2 million. And we'll never replicate what Jason built because nobody documented his process improvements from the last decade. Ashley, who'd spent most of the afternoon hiding in her office, finally spoke up. "It's just software. We can hire programmers." The silence that followed was the kind you feel in your bones. Richard Morgan looked at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time, and what he saw wasn't impressive. "Ashley," he said quietly, "you fired the one person who kept this company running because you thought he was wasting $3,200 on training. Today alone cost us more than he spent in 5 years." She tried one more defense. "He didn't follow proper procedures. He never got approval for those courses." The head of finance slid a folder across the table. Every single expense was pre-approved by the previous HR director. They're all under budget, all documented, all legitimate business expenses. You just never bothered to read the approval chain. That's when they found out about the 6 months of emails I'd sent to Ashley, trying to schedule handover training sessions. All marked as read, none ever answered. All with subject lines like critical system documentation, response requested, and Apex admin training, scheduling required. Turns out Ashley had been auto-deleting emails with technical keywords because she thought they were spam. The final nail in the coffin came when legal pulled up the recordings from the termination meeting. In most states, companies record disciplinary meetings for liability protection. Watching Ashley's smug performance while knowing what came after apparently made several board members physically uncomfortable. She destroyed 15 years of institutional knowledge because she couldn't be bothered to understand what she was looking at, said the head of operations. Richard Morgan, to his credit, made the only decision he could. Ashley, you're taking an extended leave of absence, effective immediately. But Dad, effective immediately. 3 weeks later, Ashley Morgan quietly resigned to pursue opportunities in consulting. Last I heard, she was selling real estate in Scottsdale and telling people she used to work in tech. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new office at North Star Defense, where they actually understood the value of keeping critical systems secure. My first week, I prevented a cyber attack that would have compromised a $50 million contract. My second week, I streamlined their logistics network and saved them about 20 hours of manual processing every day. The respect was immediate and obvious. When I said we needed upgraded security protocols, they cut a purchase order the same day. When I recommended additional training for the IT staff, they asked how much and how soon. When I mentioned that I'd learned some interesting lessons about system dependencies at my previous job, they asked if I'd be willing to present to the board. It's amazing how much easier work becomes when people trust your expertise instead of questioning your motives. Titanium Industries, meanwhile, was slowly bleeding to death. They hired 3 different consulting firms, each one more expensive than the last. The final rebuild took 20 months and cost $2.4 million. The new system worked, technically, but it was like replacing a custom-built race car engine with parts from AutoZone. It ran, but it didn't run well. They lost 2 major contracts during the transition period. Their biggest client, tired of delays and excuses, moved their business to a competitor who could actually deliver on time. Revenue dropped 18% the first year after I left. 6 months after the great Apex meltdown, Sean from logistics called me at my new job. "Jason," he said, "I just wanted you to know something. That USB drive you left? Lucas finally told us what was on it. The goodbye video was perfect, but that wasn't the best part." "What was the best part?" I asked. After the video played, it displayed one last message. "I tried to teach you, but you were too busy to learn. Good luck teaching yourselves." Then it deleted everything and played, "Take this job and shove it." Lucas almost cried laughing. I hadn't planned that musical touch, but Lucas had apparently added it himself after finding my old iTunes library on the shared drive. Kid had more sense than I'd given him credit for. "How's the new system working out?" I asked. Sean laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Let's just say everybody knows your name now. Half the people here would vote to make you Employee of the Year if you still worked here." But I didn't work there anymore, and I wasn't looking back. At North Star, I was building something better, something secure, something scalable, something designed by people who understood that good systems are built on trust and expertise, not corporate politics and ego. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's just walking away and letting people discover what they had and what they threw away all by themselves. They had 15 years to appreciate the value of quiet competence. Instead, they chose to trust arrogance over experience, politics over performance, credentials over capability. Me? I chose to work somewhere that understood the difference. And Ashley? Well, I hope she's happy selling houses in Arizona. I hear the real estate market is very competitive down there. Should be perfect for someone with her particular skill set.